The road to success is rarely a straight line. It's full of twists and turns, detours, redirections, hills and valleys. So join us on the path to success as we explore people's personal journeys. Come be encouraged, informed, and empowered to reach your dreams. Hi, I'm Boris Pendergrass, and I'd like to welcome you to the Paths to Success podcast. And today I have a very special guest. It is my oldest daughter, Noel Pendergrass. And we're going to talk about Noel's journey from headed to law school to head of property management and facilities for Sonder NYC Hotel Group. So with that, I'd like to say, Noel, hello and welcome.
Hello. Hi, Dad.
So let's take us back to where your journey began. And as the intro said, your path to success is really a straight line. It's twists and turns. So I know I was the expectant and exciting father with an excellent college student who's headed for law school. And let's pick it up where I know you were preparing for the LSAT. So just talk a little bit about preparing for the LSATs, going towards law school, and then what happened.
Yeah, so I started preparing for the LSATs my senior year of college, probably that last semester. If you were to ask everyone around me, I was late preparing for the LSATs because you typically start, your junior year so that you can start applying your senior year. But I think one thing I've always thought about with college is that, there's no rush. Like I actually took a year off when I graduated high school before I went to college. So I never kind of had this mindset, I guess, or urge that like I was in a race to kind of finish all these steps. But for the majority of, I would say, my high school career and college career, law school, was the plan. I was very on the law school track. I started studying probably end of my senior year. I actually took that whole kind of like summer afterwards, 4 months to study. We paid for LSAT prep courses. And I think one of the things that really kind of put a lot of things in perspective for me was that studying for the LSATs gave me a real idea of what law school would be like. In school, I was a poli-sci and journalism major. It was very heavy kind of like reading, a lot like writing intensive. So they were kind of on track to get me to a place where I felt like I was going to be prepared for that type of workload. But I think in really taking 4 months to just study for the LSATs, it was kind of like a really eye-opener to me that, one, I don't know if necessarily this is something I want to do for another 2 or 3 years. And I know obviously people who kind of take on very laborious like grad school programs, whether it be law school or med school or your master's, you're mentally preparing yourself for that. But I never thought of practicing law as, like my purpose or, something that I loved. I thought it was a means to having a career where I would make a lot of money. And it was kind of a surefire way to get there. You always hear of people, they go to law school and within your first 35 years, you're making well into the six figures. So I've never been afraid of hard work. And I just figured that would be something that I could work really hard towards. But in studying for my LSATs and having friends that, were in a law school already, I think it just became really clear to me that it was going to be a lot more difficult than I expected it. And that if it wasn't something that I really loved, that wasn't the only way to make money.
So I thought also, though, I guess my perception of it was you'd be in front of, in court, right? And in front of juries. I know your communication skills were excellent. Your debating skills were excellent. But I guess is that not what you found law would be?
I think, yeah. And kind of when you do a lot of reading then about like what law school is going to be like, I was talking to friends who are already in law school, and it just became really clear that most of practicing law is not in a courtroom. It's, everything that you do to get to that courtroom, but it's hours and hours of research. It's hours and hours of preparing briefs. It's hours of depositions. Like it's a lot of it's a lot of lead up to that kind of dramatization that like TV has made, you know, being attorney be. Another thing is I knew I wasn't going to be a defense attorney. So, you know, you grow up watching like Law and Order and stuff like that.
Right.
I think like Suits and other shows like that kind of showed you the world of corporate law, but I knew that I wanted to make money out of it. So I wasn't going to be a defense attorney. So it just became really clear that the majority of my time was not going to be like in this courtroom fighting for causes, like, you know, winning cases. It just really became clear to me that it wasn't what I always thought it was. And it wasn't the only way to make money. That was probably the biggest factor for me when I kind of came into the realization that I could get to point B, which was, you know, making money and be able to sustain a life that I wanted, that it didn't have to come from this really arduous path of being an attorney or being in medicine. Like that light bulb clicked and I was like, oh, so I don't have to do this.
Right. So now you've come to that realization, which is great, right? Hey, you know a direction you don't want to go in, and now you're trying to determine a direction that you will go in. So I think your next stop along the way is you were in the financial sector. What was that? Was that next? Was that just a job, or were you thinking about going into finance? Share a little bit about that. You were at Wells Fargo, I believe.
Yeah, so that was a job, but I fell into that job because I had worked at Wells Fargo throughout my college career. So I always held a job and went to school. My junior and senior year, I was a teller at a Wells Fargo, and I would literally go to school Monday through Thursday, drive home on Thursday, work somehow 30 hours between Friday and Monday. And I did that for, you know, basically 2 years straight. So when I realized I wasn't going to go to law school, I actually didn't know what I was going to do next. But I knew that I kind of wanted to be in a position where I still got some, you know, working experience, some corporate experience. And I honestly just started looking on, you know, the Wells Fargo job postings. I was like, I think this would probably be the easiest way for me to transition into, you know, a salaried job. That would give me some level of corporate experience so that once I made the decision of what I was going to do, it would be a lot easier, I think, for me to explain to an employer why I went completely left from, you know, what I had gotten these degrees in. And yeah, I just landed into, it was an executive assistant / sales associate role. I was working for a managing director at Wells Fargo Securities. So right on the trading floor. It was, you know, like crazy experience because I went from being in college, I always worked retail jobs as a teller. That's still kind of like a very customer service type job, to really switching into a career that not only had a high demand because of who I was supporting, who I was working for, but also forced me to learn like really, really quickly everything that comes with working in a corporate environment, on top of working in an environment that's extremely fast paced, on top of, you know, working for managing directors who expected, you know, their work to not only be done correctly, but, you know, at an expected
quick turnaround time.
Yeah, that I wasn't used to. So, you know, it was a job that I landed, but it was something that really honestly gave me an eye into what a corporate environment is, what it would honestly take for me, I think, to reach a level of that kind of success or that kind of seniority. It obviously showed me that finance was not the world that I wanted to work in. Because I actually worked there for 2.5 years, and I did think about going to get my master's. I thought about, you know, maybe transitioning this into a finance role, but ultimately I knew that wasn't for me. But I did know that I could pivot the kind of skill set of project management, which is actually what that job taught me, into another role. And when I made the decision about leaving Wells Fargo, I think at that point I had come to terms with, I loved real estate. I've always loved real estate. People on this call who don't know us who won't know that, you know, like my mom's grandfather who raised her built maybe 50% of the homes in Union right now. My mom
owned his own construction business for years.
My mom worked for Toll Brothers as a design consultant for years. So it's always something that I enjoy doing, that I think I had an inclination for. I don't think it was until kind of realizing that these other paths weren't for me, that I came to the realization that this is something that I could do, that I think that I would be well at, and that there was money in. I think once I started doing research about like all the different paths that you could take in the real estate world, whether that was on the brokerage side or the sales side, or whether it was more on the operational side, there was a way to really make money in this world. So I actually just started randomly applying to just real estate jobs. Like I started applying to brokerage firms. Like I started talking to people about getting my license. I started applying to like PM jobs, which, you know, that's a property manager. I started applying on both sides. And honestly, the first company that gave me a chance was Dixon, which is the company that I was at previously for 6 years, and actually kind of just gave me my first step into the world of real estate, which I have now been in for, you know, eight and a half years.
That's great. So now, just one thing before you moved on to your where you are today is, I know one of the things that I've said around the house is that, you know, you're looking to make, you know, that six figure, you're looking to make, you know, significant amount of income, and they don't pay you that for just 40 hours of work. So I think what I'm hearing is that environment at Wells Fargo on the trading floor, that gave you a sense of the demand that you, and what it took to, I guess, generate that kind of income. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that would definitely be accurate. It was an extremely fast-paced environment. It was an environment that kind of celebrated not only working hard, but going above and beyond every single day, because that was the expectancy of you. And I think it also showed me, while yes, you're working with people who are extremely smart, I'm sure anybody that works in the world of finance can tell you that it's not just about work ethic. It also, though, opened my eyes to the fact that there were people in these roles because of their work ethic. They weren't naturally inclined to finance or math or numbers. You know, there were people who held operational positions that just put in the work. And that was, like, I think really key for me, because I had always thought of law school as something that I would just be good at, right? Like anybody who knows me can tell you, like, I'm a debater, I'm a communicator, I have no problem, you know, I'm research queen. Like if I want something, I'm probably gonna find it. I'm gonna find 10 different ways for me to get it, and at 10 different price points. So law school always kind of felt like something that I would be naturally inclined, and it would be really easy for me. And realizing that, one, it wasn't going to be, but also completely switching to a different career, it really just forced me to work hard and to, you know, put learning how to do things that I wasn't naturally inclined to do, learning how to do things well, like learning how to take on an entire new skill set, like looking at a problem and actually not knowing the answer and having to figure out how to do things. Like that's what the trading floor did for me. And I think it was like a really invaluable experience in changing the way I just thought about what I could do in any career that I chose.
So now let's segue over to now, you know, you are head of property management and facilities at Sonder's NYC, which is a hotel group, or actually a global hotel group. So just talk a little bit about what you do there and the leadership role that you're in. And I guess really your experience at Dixon that brought you in to put you in the position for this leadership role you're in now.
Yeah, so when I made the decision to kind of switch into the real estate world, like I said, I just went with the first company that offered me a job, because I kind of felt like I was starting over again. And I was young enough to do that. I was in my 20s. I think I got hired at Dixon in not 2013. I think I got hired at Dixon in 2012 or 2011.
And just a comment, Dixon was a significant company. I mean, they were an Australian-based real estate investment trust. They were buying up properties in a hot growing area of Jersey City, right? Where else were you guys buying properties at?
Yeah, so all of Hudson County in 3 of the boroughs, so Harlem, Brooklyn, Queens. And I mean, so when I got a chance, when Dixon hired me, they hired me as an APM because I didn't have any experience. So for those who are, kind of not aware of what the operational side of residential management is an APM, you're basically an assistant to a property manager, and a property manager is responsible for the maintenance budget, overall operation of whatever that portfolio is. So I got hired as an APM. I think I held the APM role for about 6 months. And just to piggyback off of what Wells Fargo did for me, the reason why they actually hired me with no property management experience is because I had budgeting experience at Wells Fargo. So I had budgeting experience, and I had not property management experience. I had project management experience, and they were really looking for people who had those type of skill sets to bring over into their PM roles because they were taking on more responsibilities, more budgeting at the time than a typical PM would. They were also doing something that other companies were not doing. Dixon was doing everything in-house. So they were purchasing, renovating, leasing, and managing all in-house, which kind of just requires a lot more of your staff than a normal residential management company does. So that's actually kind of having that experience at Wells Fargo is the reason that it got me at a job that honestly I really probably didn't deserve, that I wasn't experienced for. So I worked there for about year and a half in that PM role. I think what I saw early on at Dixon was I was going to have to show and prove, really, to climb the ladder. So after about that year and a half, I became very vocal about the fact that I wanted, more of a management role, that I wanted a leadership role. The person that I was actually working for at that time as the director, she actually kind of really took me under her wing. She started giving me additional projects, which that's I think, a completely separate conversation, because I think for my age group, sometimes like millennials don't like taking on more work for nothing. Like it's always this idea of, well, if I'm doing more, I deserve more. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes doing more puts you in a position to your leadership that we can trust you with more responsibility, and then the reward comes after. So they started giving me additional projects.
And just 1 second there, right? There's a mindset that you do the job that you're looking for today. And then it's easier for them to promote you, put you in that job. When you're negotiating, you're able to say, hey, I've been doing this work at the next level, so move me into that position. And they feel confident about doing that. So at Dixon, that's what you're doing, right? She takes you under your wing, she's providing you these opportunities, and you're taking advantage and kind of executing on that.
Yep, and I spent 6 years in that role, and over that 6 years, I went from an APM to an associate director. And I think once I held the role of associate director, I did that for about a year and a half or 2 years, I think. That's when I learned that the best part of this job was actually leadership. To me, being able to influence a team, being able to support a team, being able to kind of input into people's careers, so that they could see their own potential, was the best part of the job for me. It was a really, really great experience. And then after 6 years at Dixon, there actually was some changes across the company, and I was let go, which was a major shock for me because I was not expecting that at all. In retrospect, I had known that it was probably time for me to leave. In this field, you can get boxed in really, really quickly. And I was boxing myself in, right? Like if I'm working in a residential management role for 6+ years, up to a decade, it's going to be really hard for me to have a lateral move at this level of leadership in any other area of this industry, because why? Why would Joe down the street hire me to, manage their commercial portfolio when it's night and day from residential? So I think I knew that it was time for me to leave, but I was actually asked. I was actually asked to leave. They did huge layoffs, and I was kind of just in the first phase of that.
Hold on 1 second right there. So that's just a great segue for commercial, right? Just for everybody, you probably already know, I wrote a book, just released it Thanksgiving weekend, and it's called Surviving Layoffs. And, that's what, Noel is talking about. Hey, there's a downside, there's a change. How do you manage through that? How do you take advantage of opportunities? So it's available on Amazon. and it's available on BorisPendergrass.com. But just back to you, Noel. Now, I remember during that time, you weren't aware of some of the financial challenges that Dixon was having. I think you were aware that, hey, there could be a situation where change would come. Would that be accurate? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, we were aware. I mean, I did not realize that it was going to come as quickly as it did. And okay. I didn't think it was going to affect me. I didn't think that I was going to be, one of the people let go, because I held a really critical role. If you're not maintaining the portfolio, if you're not accepting rent, you're not making money. So I think in hindsight, it wasn't smart for me to have that kind of, thinking, to think that, I wouldn't necessarily, that I was untouchable. But what it did do in me getting let go is it allowed me to, one, really hone on like selling myself, right? I probably went through over 10, 15 interview kind of processes in the 3 months that I didn't work. It gave me an opportunity to really look at different avenues of this industry. Where could I go? Where could I market myself to go? Where could I use everything that I've learned and transition it into a different space, but still be able to leverage my experience? So it actually ended up being like a time that I really like learned how to sell myself, which I hadn't had to do before. Like, as you kind of heard, all these other positions I just fell into. They were positions that I interviewed for and immediately got offers. I spent 3 months really having to sell myself. And I'm actually, I turned down positions as well. I turned down positions that I didn't think that were a right fit for me, that I didn't think, would be something that I saw as a contribution to my entire career 2-3 years down the road. But when I came upon Sonder, the thing that really pushed me to go for Sonder, and the same thing that pushed me to go for Dixon, and I can even say Wells, is that it was something completely different, and it was going to be something that forced me to gain a whole new skill set, which I think is really, really important. Like, especially for people of my age, like, we are known to move careers a lot quicker than maybe the generation before us. Working somewhere for 6 years is like, that's laughable for a lot of people in my age group. They're like, why would you
that's a long time?
That's a long time. Like, why would you have stayed somewhere for 6 years? It doesn't make you marketable. It doesn't make you fresh. I mean, on every interview that I went on, the question that I really had to like find a valid answer for was, well, if you stayed there so long, why are you leaving? So it almost kind of like, put me in this box that was like, it was like catch-22. Like, okay, well, so you showed this loyalty to this company for 6 years, but it doesn't make you marketable, to the guy who's been in three different roles and progressed through, 3 different kind of like transitions that taught him how to do all these different things that maybe necessarily my role didn't. So when I landed the role at Sonder, and it was also a really competitive interview process. I don't know if you remember this, but Alex probably remembers this, my sister. I had to do a challenge that took me 10 plus hours to do. Like, I felt like I was back in college. Like, I had to, prove.
Was it you had to do a number crunch or something like that? It was a project plan or something like that?
It was more than a number crunch. It was more than a number crunch. It was an analysis. It was, create an entire kind of like project plan for how you would run this department. How do you look at staffing? Which that was a really great experience for me too, because I had heard about other people really being tested on their abilities. Right. And this was the first time that I had to go through that. And I've been here now for about 1.5 years. And I think I can say that this has probably been the best work experience of my life. Like, Sonder is also, I mean, we like to call ourselves, I'm forgetting the word, but we like to call ourselves a tech company. We're moving away from that. But I think in what learning at a tech company is that they really force you to be an analyst in every role. They force you to look at a problem and not only solve that problem, but think about the 5 other problems that can result from it and solve those too. So it's really kind of like forced me to change the way that I think, change the way that I work, to be more innovative. And again, it's like a really fun experience because I'm always kind of trying to land at places that are doing something different that can level up my skill set for the next role. So I really love what I'm doing. I think if someone were to ask me today if I think I'm successful, I would probably say no, which I think is probably just own
Well,
kind of
that's just that's another conversation of what does success means, or
of
is
what
it that you have more goals ahead of you that you want to accomplish?
Right.
Right.
The success is something different for everybody, but I definitely am extremely grateful for where I am and how kind of my path, which is a really weird, winding one, and mostly by God's grace and His favor, has led me to where I am now.
So, just a couple of questions as we wrap up. Right. One, you are a head of a group, so I guess you lead an organization. How big is that organization? You know, size,
So
people.
I don't know if we wouldn't call it an organization. We would call it a department. The
Sure.
current portfolio that we have is standing 600 units. In the next 60 days, we'll double to about over 1,000. But in square footage, that is equivalent probably to over 100,000 square foot of space that I manage, which is a pretty large portfolio. I currently have a team of 8, and that team will also probably double in the next 60 to 90 days. With every property that we take on, we usually add anywhere from 2 to 3 staff members. And
so yeah. I stopped there to say, you know, success is different for every people, but there's been a level of the success to be able to lead an organization and be responsible for a portfolio that big. You know, that's definitely a level of success and accomplishment. I guess the next thing I would say and ask for you as we're wrapping up is, you know, talking to millennials, what would be your feedback as you want to encourage them to have dreams, reach their dreams, their goals? What would you share as feedback to them, skill set, motivation? What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my biggest things, and I would be stealing this from someone else. In my 20s, I listened to a woman called Myleik Teele. She is the founder of Curlbox. But in listening to her podcast, and she does this thing where she sells these journals, and it's a lot of like prompts of self-work, is that nothing replaces hard work. I think for me, in like switching careers very vastly, it's just testament that you can do whatever you want to do. And whether you are innately good at that thing, you can become really good at it. And people in places who can bring you to where you want to be to achieve success, to achieve your dreams, to achieve your goals, whatever they may be, are not going to not notice hard work, right? Like the hard work doesn't go unnoticed, like, and there isn't a replacement for it. Like, obviously we're a generation that's, I mean, super innovative. Like there are people who have created things that have literally changed our worlds, but there's teams underneath them who are working really, really, really hard to bring those dreams to fruition. And then those people, when they leave them, go on to be CEOs and COOs and heads of and entrepreneurs. So I just don't think that, you know, we can be so caught up in like this age of, you know, it happened overnight and seeing people's successes in only one lens that you forget that hard work can literally get you anything that you want.
Well, Noel, I just want to say thank you for sharing your journey with our Path to Success audience. Thank you again, Path to Success audience. Thank you for joining with us. Noel, you have a great day.
Bye.